This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Emily Brass. Janet Stewart is off. 2 fires in 24 hours. People in Winnipeg's William White neighbourhood want the city to help deal with a rash of recent fires. A number of proposals working their way through City Hall aim to address the situation, but as CBC's Cameron McLean reports, one community group wishes they'd work faster.
Another day, another fire. District Fire Chief Larry Zarski says this house on Magnus Avenue in the North End's William White neighbourhood went up in flames this morning.
It's a boarded up, abandoned house. We forced the door, the plywood, and there was 4 squatters in the present residence that are not homeowners there.
This fire is just the latest example of an ongoing problem that people in the William White neighbourhood have been trying to deal with. The neighbourhood is only 8 streets wide and 9 blocks long. But the William White Neighbourhood Association issued a press release saying they had counted 30 fires in the neighbourhood in the last 2 to 3 years. Just a day since they released that newsletter, they've counted 2 more, including this one.
Well, it's very scary.
Daryl Warren says the fires are driving people out of the neighbourhood.
And our seniors are just scared to death, and their kids want them out of here, want them to move out because they just say it's too unsafe.
The city has made efforts recently to crack down on fires in vacant buildings. This started billing property owners for fire responses. Another proposal would speed up the demolition process by eliminating the need for a public hearing and a plan to rebuild. Mayor Scott Gillingham says city staff want to see changes.
Bylaws officers have to go out to these sites repeatedly, and I know that our fire department, has to go out to these sites. And every time you've got a building that is vacant and it's boarded up, it can present safety challenges.
Derek Balkin of the Firefighters Union says abandoned buildings pose a higher risk because crews often don't know what they're dealing with.
We have no idea whether these buildings are inhabited or not. And just as importantly is we don't know the integrity of that building when we show up.
Along with the changes to the city's demolition process, city councillors are considering measures to increase security and enforcement on vacant buildings. Those proposals will have a final vote at council later this month. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A priest charged with sexually assaulting an 8-year-old girl has been released from custody. Arul Savari was arrested May 27th in Little Grand Rapids after the girl reported she was touched inappropriately by Savari while alone together in a church. The case has drawn the attention of a survivors group, which argues there are too few checks and balances for international priests coming to work in Canada. CBC's Josh Crabb explains.
Father Arul Savari appeared by video in a Winnipeg courtroom Monday afternoon before a judicial justice of the peace before he was released on bail. The 48-year-old is charged with 5 offenses after an 8-year-old girl reported to police she was touched inappropriately by Savari while they were alone together at the Roman Catholic Church in the remote Manitoba First Nation. Savari was released on a number of conditions, including surrendering his passport to police, no contact or communication with the complainant or any child under the age of 16 unless the situation's unavoidable. The Crown consented to Savari's release. The RCMP said previously that Savari came to Canada from India 6 years ago to work as a priest in Little Grand Rapids and Pongassi First Nation. But there are questions about the vetting process for international priests who come to work in Canada. The Survivors Network of those abused by priests says it's too easy for foreign priests to be seconded into a Canadian congregation by using religious visas with little scrutiny.
When they are coming over on a work visa or religious visa, we do not have that background check. We do not know if there was a problem with that individual priest and or seminarian or religious brother or none.
It's not clear how Savari entered Canada or if he had an exemption for a work permit because he's a religious worker. In 2017, the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops adopted a policy to verify identity, screen for criminal background and child abuse history, and encouraged its churches to adopt the policy. At that time, many dioceses had a similar policy in place. The Archdiocese of St. Boniface, who Savari works for, has a policy in place asking all church employees and volunteers over 18 to submit to a criminal record check and a child abuse registry check. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls traveled across the country. It took 3 years, with the commissioners hearing over 2,000 testimonies. The final report was released in 2019 with 231 calls for justice to protect Indigenous women and girls. 4 years later, families say not much has changed. CBC's Stephanie Cram reports.
Rain or shine, hundreds come out to remember the dead. Last year, Winnipeg marked a grim record, 10 Indigenous women killed. Hilda Anderson-Pierce is an advocate with painful personal experience. She testified at the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in 2017. Her sister, Dawn Anderson, was found dead in the snow in 2011.
She loved life, she loved her children, she loved new experiences and opportunities, like everything that life had to offer her.
The inquiry's final report in 2019 includes 231 calls for justice to protect Indigenous women and girls. An investigation by CBC found that only 2 of those calls for justice have been completed. More than half, 123, have not been started.
Ending this crisis will require ongoing collaboration, investments, and initiatives from all levels of government.
Mark Miller points to major investments his government is making and says it's prioritizing a red dress alert to notify all Canadians when an Indigenous woman or girl goes missing. One of the inquiry's commissioners says the pace of action is too slow.
I try not to cry every day or to be angry because I am mad.
The commission says the calls for justice are not recommendations, but legal imperatives.
We showed you by the voices of the families and survivors, these are the priorities for those who participate. You don't have to recreate something, just implement.
Anderson-Pierce says all calls for justice have to be acted on at once without some being prioritized over others.
The action has to be more effective and more concrete, to be able to create those pathways and those supports and resources, that can end the genocide that is occurring in this country.
Anderson-Pierce says Indigenous women and girls continue to experience racism and violence, and that implementing the calls for justice will save lives. Stephanie Cram, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And now a CBC special report we're calling Mother, Sister, Daughter. It's an exclusive review of government efforts, including Manitoba's, to stop the violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. CBC producer Donna Carrero has spent months looking into those efforts, and the results are grim. She joins us now. Hi, Donna.
Hi, Emily. So I'm going to let Isabel Daniels set this series up. She's from Sagin First Nation. A few years ago, her cousin Leanne Daniels had been trying for a while to escape an abusive relationship. I'm going to let Isabel tell you what happened next.
He had her in a hotel in Winkler, Manitoba. He had been torturing her for 3 days. And on the 3rd day, he fell asleep. And when he fell asleep, she went in the bathroom and took her life. And he served 90 days for the domestic violence. And he was out.
So Leanne Daniels and Isabel and thousands of other Indigenous women and girls are the very reason that back in 2016, the federal government ordered a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. And exactly 4 years ago, in early June 2019, the final report of that inquiry was released to the public. So in that report, Canadians were handed exactly 231 calls for justice.
And remind us, what are those 231?
Yeah, it's a good question. So these calls were like an instruction manual of sort that governments, institutions, and Canadians were directed to implement. The idea being it was to eliminate the racially charged factors behind the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And Emily, these weren't just suggestions. The inquiry report made it clear these are legal imperatives. But 4 years later, the CBC has learned that of the 231 calls for justice, just 2 of these directives have been completed. Almost half of them have not even been started.
Wow. So can you give us some examples of what's happened and maybe what's not happened yet?
So on paper, there's been a lot of action. In 2021, for example, the feds committed more than $2 billion worth of promises to fulfill some of these calls for justice. In reality, though, that hasn't translated into concrete action. That $2.1 billion, much of it hasn't even been spent. Okay, so consider, for example, the case of Leanne Daniels. Some of these calls were meant to address intimate partner violence. Millions were committed to building safe shelters for women escaping violence. But these shelters haven't been built. And in fact, existing women's shelters that got extra funding during the pandemic, they're actually going to see a decrease in that funding come September. Here's what Isabel Daniels had to say about that.
It really gives us as Aboriginal women that sense of that society thinks that we're disposable, but we're not. We're sacred beings. We are life givers and protectors of our families and our children.
And speaking of Isabel, you actually spoke to a lot of women for this series, right?
That's exactly right. Isabel was one of 20 mothers, sisters, daughters, survivors who lent their voice to this project. So here's how it worked. We invited them to the CBC and to share stories, whatever stories they wanted us to know about. They were supported by an elder and trauma-informed counselors. They're also the ones who've been advocating for change for years. They are the matriarchal front lines of this movement. And they made it clear. The most telling reveal of the lack of progress is in their stories. Destiny Papanicus, for example, she knows firsthand there's been little success in creating programs that emotionally and financially support families affected by violence. That's Call for Justice 5.6. Her mother, Martha Michelle, was murdered in northern Manitoba. Her killer was out in 5 years. Her sister, Angel Blue Sky, was found in Saskatchewan, hanged in a closet. Police ruled out homicide. Papanicus herself was held hostage and assaulted, and she escaped by jumping through a window.
I got away. I broke both my legs, my arm, but I got away. My case was just thrown out, like I was just nothing. But I am something. I'm a mother. I'm a granddaughter. I'm a sister. Like, I have lots to live for, and that was my will to live when I jumped out that window.
Well, we heard the response from Mark Miller, Canada's Crown and Indigenous Relations Minister, and Stephanie Cram's story. What about provincially, Donna?
So provincially, there has been some progress. Manitoba did create an action plan to eliminate the calls for justice. That in itself was actually one of their obligations. Manitoba is adhering to federal legislation that gives First Nations, Inuit and Métis communities the authority to take over child welfare. And just last year, Peguis First Nation became the first Indigenous group in Manitoba to take back child welfare duties. But there have been some fails. Manitoba and other provinces also committed to ending the practice of birth alerts, targeting newborns for apprehension before they're even born. And in reality, however, that practice hasn't ended. We've actually reported on these instances, both here in Manitoba and Ontario too. Manitoba has also not signed off on things like creating a basic annual income, nor has it improved access to addiction services in remote communities, nor has it built an airport in remote communities like Wasagamak. Just a few weeks ago, for example, the province told the CBC they were still considering it, but they need the feds to ante up some funds to it. Well, that's the same answer both governments have been giving the community for a good 25 years.
So what are the consequences of this lack of progress on these recommendations?
The same deadly status quo. So here in Winnipeg alone, for example, last year, a fifth of all homicide victims, 20% were women, Indigenous women.
Wow, and so what does this mean for all the mothers and sisters and daughters who've shared their stories with us?
Well, that's exactly right, isn't it? Because that's what it's all about. They're going to keep doing what they always do. They get up, they raise their children, they honor the loved ones that they've lost. I'm going to give the last word to one of these advocates, Nicole Murdoch. She's an Ojibwe mother, she's a university student, and she's an advocate.
I don't know how you listen to a land acknowledgement at a Winnipeg Jets game and don't see and recognize that in this city, Indigenous women are turning up in the Winnipeg landfill. What I wish the average individual knew and would understand is that there are so many things that can be done, like within yourself. how people choose to view us, to see us, to engage with us, I think has to change.
Thanks for all your hard work on this, Donna.
You're welcome.
For more on this special series, Mother, Sister, Daughter, just go to cbc.ca/MMIWG. We'll also bring you more stories throughout the week. A 15-year-old Winnipeg boy who went missing last month has been found dead. Family and friends had been searching for the teen. They made banners looking for information on his whereabouts. Anuka Gunachilaka was last seen in Fort Richmond on May 24th, and his family said last week the search had been suspended. Now, Winnipeg police say they found the body. RCMP are investigating the death of a 2-year-old boy in Red Sucker Lake First Nation in northern Manitoba. Police say the child was taken to the local nursing station on Saturday in medical distress, and that's where the boy died. Investigators say the death is suspicious. The RCMP Forensic Identification Unit has been called in. A statue of Queen Elizabeth has been vandalized again a day after it was put back into its place following repairs. The bronze figure has been spray painted with the words colonizer and killer. Demonstrators toppled the statue on the Manitoba Legislative grounds 2 years ago during a demonstration over the deaths of Indigenous children in residential schools. A statue of Queen Victoria was also pulled down, beheaded, and covered in red paint. It was damaged beyond repair, but on Friday, the restored version of Queen Elizabeth was put back in place. CBC has reached out to the province for comment. An assembly line of about 30 high school students set up shop Saturday in the parking lot of Shaftesbury High School. The group was building beds for children in need. Teachers, police, and even Winnipeg's mayor pitched in to help.
Today is a Sleep in Heavenly Peace bed build. It's a collaboration with Sleep in Heavenly Peace, Shaftesbury High School students, and we are coming together today to build 20 beds. The beds are going to the homes of Winnipeg children that don't have a bed. Some of them have never had a bed.
Every single bed that we're building today is already spoken for. We have a huge demand here in the city. We estimate that there's about 3 to 4% of the child population in Winnipeg that needs a bed. That means there's about 4,000 kids that do not have a bed here in Winnipeg. I'm not talking about a bed that we're here to replace. These are children that literally do not have a bed to sleep on.
Well, I'm sanding this board and more boards after to make beds for kids who don't have.
We're a family that likes to help people, and so we bring out the kids and teach them that it's important to make sure that you're contributing.
After today, we'll have built over 750 beds, and we've installed 670 of them. This is the first time we've had a build event that was organized by the student council and by teachers at a high school here in the city. It's teaching these young children, these young students, the importance of giving back to community. And it's really all about community making their own community a better place.
It's really important, it gives them a sense of community, and it's just really amazing to be out here together helping.
And then I leave feeling like I've done something with my day, and I feel leaving happy that I know that I've affected somebody in a positive way at the end of the day.
Kids doing a kindness act for other kids is a beautiful thing.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, it was another hot, sticky day in downtown Winnipeg. CBC meteorologist John Sauter joins us now. So you're chasing some storms or keeping an eye on them anyway?
Keeping an eye on them. I'm not going to chase them. I'm just going to stay right here with you.
Please do.
Yeah, some of these rain showers, though, are dumping a whole lot of rain in certain locations, in isolated locations, and then just down the road, there's no rain happening at all. I'll explain here in a minute, but yeah, let's get to the satellite and radar map. It seems like, as far as cloud is concerned, it's either a clear sky or pouring rain, and I'm looking over Emily's shoulder right now at some dark clouds, and that's what I'm seeing right here on the eastern side of Winnipeg, and starting to drop some rain right through into the downtown area. A couple of raindrops anyway. Are they reaching the ground? Probably. We have a humid air mass here Dew points today have been up around 19 to 20. I'll talk more about that in a second. Right now, we do have one severe thunderstorm warning in effect, and that's this area just northwest of Dauphin. Just a few minutes ago, there was another warning down around Deloraine. That has since ended. So we still have storms in the area with lightning, possibly some nickel-sized hail, but yeah, the conditions for severe thunderstorms not quite there, not the criteria not quite being met. So these ones are starting to weaken a little bit. I would not be surprised if we see another warning on this one just to the west of Deloraine, which seems to be strengthening once again. Here's the storm that has been right sitting, well, earlier today was right over Riding Mountain, and now is just up toward the Swan River area and heading toward Benito. But you can see the storm is not only giving out lightning, some pretty decent-sized hail and copious amounts of rain. It even sort of combined with another storm. So this area getting a lot of rain in the last couple of hours, and that's why that warning is in effect. The red area that you see here is all a heat warning, and then we've got a severe thunderstorm watch just issued farther north, Flin Flon and the Paw, and up towards areas like Lynn Lake for some storms that are coming out of Saskatchewan into northern Manitoba tonight. So lots to talk about. Temps in the 30s, lows only around the 20s for the next couple of days. I think that this heat warning will stay in effect as we head into tomorrow as well. Keep in mind, dew point temperature is a great way to tell how sticky, muggy, uncomfortable it is. And today we were right around that 18 to 20 range. So certainly muggy and certainly even uncomfortable in some cases. And it'll be like that through the day tomorrow. Looking at Futurecast, we're pretty clear into Tuesday morning, although some storm activity across the north where that watch is in effect. And then we see a resurgence of some of these hit and miss isolated showers in the west and the northeast. Wednesday morning may see something here in the Winnipeg area, and then Wednesday afternoon we start to see isolated showers once again, and even then we're still up around 27, 28 degrees. So tonight we're only dropping to 19. If you're going to sleep around 11, probably still around 25 degrees though. That 19 is early in the morning. There's the 8 a.m. temperature, and then on into the afternoon, another hot day and another humid day with a sun-cloud mix, 31 degrees, a risk of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm, and then the next few days still look rather warm. But after Thursday, things will start to stabilize. I'll have that for you in your 7-day forecast.
Thank you, John. Yeah, a lot of hit or miss storms. I hope one of them hits my car.
Okay.
Thank you, John. For the first time in more than 70 years, the convocation robes worn by the University of Manitoba's president and chancellor have been redesigned. The robes now showcase Ojibwe design and beadwork by indigenous artist Jackie Travers. In a ceremony today, the robes were blessed and presented to the public.
For each of President Benarosh and myself, 2 elders each held the robes and placed them on us. And those elders likened it to receiving a star blanket and being wrapped in a star blanket, which I know humbly not a lot, but know that it's really an honor from an indigenous perspective. And so it was very moving. I had goosebumps and a few little tears, and I'm just so humbled and proud.
So I've designed the robes with Ojibwe flower motifs with very, very strong roots flowing down into the land. The red circle symbolizes for MMIWG, and the orange symbolizes for our children that never made it home. And these flowers are the prairie crocus. And these are the buds, and these are the really small buds going upwards, so they haven't even formed yet. More of our people are starting to graduate, you know, and it's about time that we're allowed to represent our nations and our culture and pride in where we come from.
What we've got also is honoring the past. So the blue line and the gold here, you can see on the old robes. And this is honoring the past, but showing that we're moving forward in a different way, in a more inclusive way, as we move forward. And as you said, there have been students and even some of our people who work, elders and others, who have wanted to wear their traditional robes to convocation. And I think this sends a strong message that's okay at the University of Manitoba, and we will accept that. And not only will we accept it, we will honor it.
Coming up, a bleak forecast for wildfire season. An unprecedented number of fires this early in the year is sparking concerns we could hit record numbers this summer. More on that after the break. The federal government just released a grim forecast for this wildfire season. New modeling shows an unprecedented number of fires for this early in the year, and there are concerns we could hit record numbers this summer. CBC's Ashley Burke has more.
Canadian officials say these are some of the most severe wildfires Canada's ever seen. And in the next few months, it could get even worse.
Well, this is not yet Canada's most severe fire season. If this trajectory continues, it very well could be.
The Prime Minister joining forces with 5 of his ministers to deliver what they called a sobering national update.
The current forecast for the next few months indicates the potential for continued higher than normal fire activity.
More than 2,000 wildfires have broken out across Canada since May, burning more than 3 million hectares of land. That's 10 times more than the average for the entire fire season that's only just begun.
We will be there to ensure that all Canadians are protected right through this summer.
There are now more than 400 active fires from coast to coast, and new projections suggest warm and dry conditions in June mean a higher risk from BC to Western Quebec that could last until the end of August.
It is expected that we have enough resources to cover the summer. If things get worse, we are developing contingency plans.
Those contingency plans could include more international support. Already 950 firefighters from other countries are helping, including from South Africa, Australia, and the U.S. The Canadian Armed Forces have been deployed to 3 provinces. It can take days to train them, which meant military enforcement arrived in Nova Scotia when the worst was over.
They're not specialists here, and they are backup, they are mop-up, and they are general firefighting duties. So they don't go into fight at the pointy end of the stick, as it were, anyway.
The official opposition said it would support anything the government does to help regions in need.
We would be open to studying any solutions that will help the country better coordinate its water bombers and other assets.
Officials say that since last month, more than 100,000 people have been impacted by evacuations in some way, and are urging Canadians to take extreme caution in forested areas this summer to avoid starting fires. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
More than 160 fires are burning right now in Quebec, most of them out of control. 14,000 people have been ordered to leave their homes, and the Army is now helping out, and more assistance is coming from abroad. CBC's Kwabena Odura reports from Montreal.
The fire situation in Quebec continues to evolve. There was a new evacuation order in the Abitibi region for St. Lambert. Now everyone is being forced out of their homes, and they are in a state of emergency. Now in La Belle-sur-Quivillon, this is an area that earlier in the weekend that they had people evacuate. So the city is completely empty except for the mayor, the police, and the firefighters who are fighting the fight. Moving on to the North Shore, this is an area where all the army is there helping out, trying to fight the fires. And the mayor of Sept-Îles says that they are extending the state of emergency for a little bit longer, and he doesn't want people to return home because he's worried that if they do return home, they will be forced out again. Now, I spoke to one man who lives in the Manioutanam region, and he says that it's very devastating that his whole community had to be displaced.
I think we are very sad because, you know, the Mersey River is very important for the community. It's all the ancestors take this river to go back in the inland, you know.
Now, I talked to the Quebec Fire Prevention Agency, and they say that the weather being hot is not making it easier. And also the intensity of the fires is making it hard to get firefighters into the mode to fight these fires.
Right now, because of the number of fires that we have to prioritize where we're going to allocate resources, and we're down to the first priority. We're intervening on the fires that are threatening human life.
In terms of the people coming to help the fight in Quebec, there are 480 extra resources that have been put in place to help or even trained to be ready to fight the fires. Now, 138 soldiers are in the Sept-Îles region, and later today, 100 of them should arrive as well. There are 100 firefighters coming from France. Also, there will be some coming from the United States. There is rain in the forecast for the North Shore region in the next couple of days, so that should help with the fires. But in the Abitibi, Western Quebec region, there is no rain for several of days, and this will make things harder. And people are just hoping that they can get back to their homes soon. Kwabena Odura, CBC News, Montreal.
Crews in eastern India have repaired the tracks following Friday's deadly triple train crash that killed at least 275 people. The disaster also injured more than 1,000 people. It took hundreds of workers and heavy equipment all weekend long to clear the mangled debris. Early findings suggest a signaling failure may have caused the first collision. On Friday, a passenger train hit a stationary freight train, derailed, and jumped toward a second track. It then hit another passenger train traveling in the opposite direction. This is believed to be one of the worst rail accidents in the country's history. Coming up, she was known as one of Australia's most notorious serial killers. Now she's been released from prison. We'll tell you why after the break. An Australian woman once considered the country's worst female serial killer has been released from jail as new evidence indicates she was wrongly convicted. The 55-year-old was freed today after spending 20 years in prison. She was convicted in the deaths of her 4 children. Kathleen Folbig has always insisted they died of natural causes. New scientific evidence indicates she was telling the truth. It turns out all of her children had genetic mutations that led to their deaths. The case is considered by some to be Australia's greatest miscarriage of justice. John Sauter's back from the CBC Meteorological Center. John, I was at Polo Park over the weekend. Incredible rainstorm, thunder and lightning. There was a lot of that, wasn't there?
Yeah, I've been talking a lot about how isolated these showers have been lately and will be again tomorrow, and how they can drop a huge amount of rain in a short period of time on a very specific location. So here is a replay of the rainstorm that Emily's talking about. Now, this is from about 3 o'clock to 6 on Saturday. Let's make it 2 o'clock to 6. So it continues to loop here. But right in this section of the city right here is where we picked up a huge amount of rain. Other parts of the city didn't see much at all, but right around 5 to 6 o'clock, it was an epic deluge at the airport. Stats here courtesy of Julian. 52.6 millimeters in 1 hour at the airport. And you break that down a little bit more and you get about 49 millimeters in just 30 minutes, 13.4 millimeters in just 5 minutes. So certainly a heavy rainfall. Interestingly enough, last year on June 24th, we had one of those 1 hour rainfalls that was 53.3 at the Winnipeg airport. So 2 Junes in a row and almost the same time of year. So it's same time of the month, I should say. But yeah, an epic rainfall on Saturday. Today it's just hot, steamy out there, 32 at the Forks. That was the forecast high. We've still got warm temperatures out to the west, even farther to the north. You look at northern Manitoba today, and temperatures are in the 30s for Norway House and up the western edge of the province, 27 as far north as Lynn Lake. And right now it's still 26 in the Thompson area. So forecast conditions will include some showers, but again, they're isolated, so your friends down the street might not get too many raindrops, and you might pick up 10 to 20 millimeters, but not tonight in northwestern Ontario. And I don't think there's much more than an evening shower followed by clearing here across the southeast. There's a shower in the Winnipeg area right now. It'll be done quite quickly. And then we've got some storms up around Swan River, Benito, down around Brandon and Deloraine. So that southwest corner of the province still getting some rainfall. Showers, thunderstorms tonight. There's a severe thunderstorm watch in effect in western parts of northern Manitoba. And tomorrow, it's either cloudy or a sun-cloud mix and a chance of showers, risk of a storm on into the afternoon. Same true for the south, and we're looking at temps once again in the low 30s, and that's why that heat warning is still in effect. Another 31 tomorrow in Winnipeg, 30 in Steinbach, sun-cloud mix 29 in Barons River, and over into northwestern Ontario, quite warm as well, 26s and 27s, a little cooler with a chance of an afternoon shower in Dryden.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Carissa Chaput and thousands of Indigenous women and girls like her are the reason the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls gave Canadians 231 calls for justice. They're legally mandated directives to stop the violence against them and Two-Spirit people. 4 years later, a CBC analysis has found just 2 of those directives have been completed. More than half have not been started. Here's Carissa Chaput telling her story and why completing those directives is so important.
My name's Carissa Chaput. I am 19 years old. My community, I was born in Dauphin, but I was mostly raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I was homeless by the time I was 15. I was looking for food on the streets. I was hopping couch to couch. I was human trafficked at a young age too. I was in and out of CFS's homes. They would put me into shelters and just plenty of shelters that, like, some places I was starved, some places I was abused. When I was growing up, I kind of got mixed with the wrong crowd, I guess I could say. They brought me into their home. I was being abused. I was being forced to do things I never wanted to do. They would drug me up. They would shoot me up. They did a lot of stuff to me. If I was to leave the house, they would beat me up and drag me back in. So the only time I would get to leave is with them. And if I was to go by myself, I would get in trouble and dragged down the stairs. I was held hostage until I was found by police, detectives, until they raided the house for me. It was just a normal day. I was going to do what they wanted me to do to make money, and we heard pounding on the door. And all of them were rushing around the house. I didn't know what for until police started coming in, and they asked me my name. They said, "Are you Carissa?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Okay, you need to come with us now." And I was brought to the hospital, and when I was found, I had chlamydia in my eyes from all the stuff that was happening to me. I was really beaten up really bad. I was 92 pounds. I was spitting up blood. I had a lung problem. So this took so long. I felt really relieved, but I just wondered and thought to myself, why would it take this long to find me? I was underage. I wasn't even of age to telling people, oh yeah, I want to do this and that. I wasn't. They didn't tell me why it took too long. On their mind, I was apparently too hard to handle, so they kind of gave up, I could say. Like the system, like Métis CFS, out of all people, Métis CFS kind of gave up on me. Because I was a very troubled little girl, but I had a heart and I'm a human being. I didn't deserve any of that. I think we need more resources, more homes for the girls when you age out of care, because I notice a lot of children, when they age out of care, they go homeless, and then this stuff happens to them, and then they end up being murdered, or they overdose, or they go missing. I don't see that they're protecting us at all. If they were protecting us, a lot of us wouldn't be missing, a lot of us wouldn't be dead. A lot of us would have not perfect lives, but good lives that we deserve and that we need, because we need to have good lives in order to survive.
Well, how are you getting to work tomorrow? Coming up, we'll talk Bike Week and how you can get in on the ride. That's coming up after the break. When his friends were buying their first cars, our next guest was investing in his first 10-speed bicycle. To kick off Bike Week in Winnipeg, Dave Elmore led a group of cyclists from Assiniboine Park to the Forks this morning for Bike to Work Day. And that's something he knows all about. He started regularly commuting on two wheels more than 30 years ago, and today, at the age of 69, he owns 8 bicycles. I caught up with Dave earlier today. Hi, Dave. So how's the day gone so far?
It's been fantastic. I mean, the weather has been so cooperative. It was a lovely morning. First thing this morning, we did a group ride from Assiniboine Park to the Forks. It was tolerable. It wasn't that hot, so it was actually great. And the rest of the day has gone really, really well. I think people have really had a great time on Bike to Work Day, and as I said, the weather's cooperated, so it always brings the people out when the weather's good.
Is there any way to know how many people have been taking part in riding their bikes so far today?
Well, we had 62 pit stops all around the city, and let's see, we figure that we don't have all the numbers in yet, but we figure we're somewhere in around over 3,000 people have stopped at those 62 pit stops. And that's only just a portion of the people riding, because a lot of people are on their way to work. They don't have time to stop, they just keep going. Or they don't stop at this stop and they go to the next one. So I think we've had lots and lots of people.
And what about the people who aren't riding? You've probably heard from some people who have their reasons why they don't want to commute by bike, and I bet safety has something to do with that. What are you hearing from people?
Well, that's always a concern for people. They're always concerned about their safety, and that's the primary reason people decide not to ride their bikes. So it would be, again, it would be nice if we can expand our infrastructure to make people feel safe and give people the opportunity to choose alternative forms of transportation as opposed to having to take their car all the time.
Maybe would you make a pitch? Is there certain things you would say there's advantages to riding your bike?
Oh, there's huge advantages. I mean, from an environmental standpoint, even from your own health. I think I'm a reasonably good example at 69 that I'm staying very, very healthy by riding my bicycle. So I think there's huge benefits to it. There's always the fear of the other vehicles that are on the road, and you are a vulnerable road user.
And you were part of this Bike to Work Week ever since it started many years ago. What kind of changes have you seen? How much has it grown since it started?
Well, I was there at the very beginning when we started the first Bike to Work Day, which was 15 years ago, and Bike Week transitioned out of there. About 5 years in, we decided we should expand and try to reach that sort of the general audience, everybody who rides a bike, as opposed to just the commuters, right? That was our primary audience at first, but we want to reach that broader audience so that we get more people involved and try to bring about a cultural change. We get more people seen as riding. I do. I ride my bike too. I might not ride to work, but I do ride a bicycle. So again, making it more accepted as part of our culture.
And would you say more Winnipeggers do ride their bikes nowadays than when this began?
Oh, absolutely. I've been a commuter for 35 plus years, and over those years, the numbers have steadily climbed. Yes, you can look on any given day and say, well, there's nobody in that bike lane, but depends on the time of day and depends on the weather. So yeah, it's constantly growing and constantly changing. And I think that even the pandemic had a huge impact, because I think that the pandemic helped us grow some of that, because a lot of people went and dragged that bike out from their shed or their basement, or they went and bought a new bike because they wanted to get outside and get active. And I think a lot of those people have taken it maybe another step now, and hopefully we can encourage them to continue to take steps.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us today, Dave.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome.
And have fun the rest of the week.
I will. There's lots going to be happening, so check us out, bikeweekwinnipeg.com, and check out that schedule. Lots happening.
Well, here's a live look at a very rainy Portage Avenue in downtown Winnipeg, one of those storms John Sauter was talking about. He'll be back with a 7-day forecast, and we'll have your daily lift. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Well, you saw that live look downtown. Pretty intense shower rolling right through the middle of Winnipeg, and it does have some lightning with it. This one heading out towards St. James, the Maples area. You want to get the kids inside. This one does have lightning with it. All right, your 7-day forecast. Same kind of weather for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then things really stabilize, and we get a bit of a break from the extreme heat toward the weekend with a morning temperature on Saturday of 13 and afternoon of 24. It sure was hot on the weekend. An estimated 10,000 people marched in yesterday's Pride Parade.
And that makes it the biggest in Winnipeg history. And that's our Daily Lift.
The vibe this year is probably the best ever, and yeah, just to see people caring for each other and smiling, you feel that vibe.
It's bigger and better this year. Like I feel like it's just like right now with like how it's going down. Like people need to be heard more than ever. Like it's now or never. Like we have to show that we're still here. We're not going anywhere, and that's the way it's going to be.
It's my first Pride, and I've been out as Pan for a while now, so it's just really exciting to get to come and be among the community and just celebrate being out and stuff.
This is my second Pride. I'm pretty excited to be here. It's nice to be around people that are part of my community and to know that I'm in a safe space for once.
It's my second Pride as well, and I'm here to support my best friend and my sister as well for coming out and accepting who they are and to support everyone else here.
Because of the amazing energy, you really see a lot of peace, joy, and love, and yeah, we're celebrating, how far we've come. I mean, if I could tell myself when I was a teenager that I would be experiencing this and seeing this, I would be so happy. So yeah, happy Pride.
Aw, what a great turnout, and looks like so much fun.
Yeah, what a day. Coming up on CBC right now, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final between Florida and Vegas, and that's coming up right now.
That was the CBC Winnipeg News at 6. I'll be back at 11. Have a good evening.
See you later.